What was the time and the process from the idea generation, the research, and kind of the first version of the product?
It was probably about 6 to 9 months, I would say, the kind of the process. So research always takes longer than you think. You obviously need to design the research, you need to get it into market, you need to analyze it. And then it was probably about probably 6 to 12 month process, I think, from thinking we need to do some research and then launching Junkee. The other key part of Junkee's success was the team that we built from day one. So we had an amazing editorial team led by Steph Harmon, who's now the culture editor at The Guardian, and Rob Moran, who is now an amazing editor and writer at Fairfax at 9. And the two of them came on board to help build a team. And I always say that, we might have had the spark of what Junkee was as the owners of the business, but it was once you hand it over to a team that it then, you tell them where you want to go, you give them the vision and the resources, and then it really was Steph and Rob and the teams of people that we built around Junkee that then brought writers on board, got people involved, kind of turned it into something real from an idea on a PowerPoint.
How many people were involved in planning Junkee or conceiving Junkee, and equally in building it, executing it?
Yes, there's probably about 4 or 5 of us in the initial stages of kind of coming up with what it was. And we each had our own expertise. So Ian, for example, did all the technical side and figured out we should use WordPress and build it like this. Neil had a lot of the business side. This is what the revenue should look like. And I had the kind of the creative and editorial and the marketing side. And combined, that was a really powerful team because we'd worked together for a long time. We knew our strengths, we knew our weaknesses. That was the original start of it. And then from there, we then would bring more people in, and I'd do lots of interviews and then build an editorial team. But Junkee, to start with, it was small. There was maybe 3 or 4 editorial people. I consider that kind of quite small for the impact that it had within the first 6 months or so.
Wow. So you went to market, was built by 3 or 4 people.
Yeah. And we went to market, and we had an interesting a revenue launch strategy, which was we didn't want to be thinking too much around having to hustle and having to kind of sell advertising stuff on it. So we took the model to a couple of different people, and we said we're going to have 3 or 4 launch sponsors for 6 months of this idea that we have. We have no idea if it's going to do 1 million pages or 10 million pages. Or if the audience is going to be 100,000 people or 1 million people. But whatever it is, we're giving 4 advertisers only 25% share of voice of what this is going to be. Are you interested? And we found 4 advertisers, and they were, God, I'm trying to think of, QT Hotels was one of them. I think 42 Below Vodka was one of them. Visit Canberra, or I think there was certainly some tourism body was part of it. And it was, a relatively mixed bag of clients. Of some that had done work with this in the past, some that I think Qantas may have been part of that as well. And they took a punt, and they got 25% of whatever that share of voice was going to be over 6 months. And amazingly, it did phenomenally in 6 months. And so we really kind of over delivered for all of them, given the value that they were going to put into the business.
Right. Did they take much persuading?
We used our history of relationships with them to help persuade them. But we probably would have spoken to 20 or 30 clients in order to get 4 of them on board. So obviously that's the whole sales process. But part of that was also our history that we had with them. So we didn't go to them fresh and say, you've never worked with us. We went to partners that we had worked with for a long time.
And the notion of being sort of pioneering, whether it's using native or using open source technology, was that just based on the sort of leadership team's own research? Like, how were you able to think ahead and kind of reframe how digital media should be done at a time when there wasn't much digital media, I don't think.
There wasn't. It's so strange thinking back to what that time was, because a lot of the things that we're talking about now just make sense because that's the way digital media works. But this was very early days of digital media, and it was a golden age that we were very lucky to be a part of, and not just in Australia, overseas as well. So in the months that we launched Vox Media, so Vox launched in the US, BuzzFeed was around that time, Vice kind of had its giant growth, and a lot of that had to do with Facebook. Everyone joined Facebook, so everyone had joined kind of then or a couple of years earlier, and you published content onto there, and it reached this huge wide audience that you wouldn't have access to. And we used that to reach a new audience and to build a business. So for all of Meta's faults now, when they were in that growth phase, they enabled hundreds, thousands of media companies around the world to grow. That's obviously changed, and we're in a very different environment now, but we were very lucky that our timing of launching this, and as was Vox, as was BuzzFeed, as was Vice, all these kind of powerhouse media companies, all launched and had growth around the same time, facilitated by Facebook in particular.